I'm in the process of repairing a very noisy engine fan in this W220 S500, and I wanted to share with you how you could save considerable money if you do some homework, do some research, and buy replacement parts instead of the entire unit. This is the fan unit in this car. It's huge. It has a motor here and a fan, a large fan, and the fan is driven by a belt. And the whole part is only available as one unit from Mercedes-Benz. And of course you can buy them used, but I found that most of them used, you don't know what you're getting. You could run into the same problem, a few months down the road with another noisy fan. So I set out to find if there was a replacement motor because I did some testing. I'll take you back a week ago when I pulled this out of the car and actually did some tests, and you can see how I was able to determine that it was the motor that was making all the noise and not the fan here. On the electric fans that have a separate motor and are belt driven, you're going to have to take it apart to determine whether the noise is coming from the bearings in the fan or coming from the bearings in the motor. Notice the small serpentine belt that's used to drive this fan. If I tip the fan up and spin this, it makes a little noise, but I don't hear any excessive bearing noise. Now let's take the motor, and I'm going to power the motor with a 12-volt booster that I have here. And let's see how quiet this motor sounds. Oh, listen to that. Have any of you heard a similar noise like that in the front of your engine? Well, it's obvious that it's the motor bearings. So I'm going to have to go on a hunt because if you buy a new fan from Mercedes-Benz, it's only sold as one unit. I only need the motor. And I'm going to warn you, be very careful buying these used like on eBay because you may just inherit another fan that makes the same type of noise. Now a shop quoted me $1,500 to replace the entire unit, including labor. I declined. I said, I'll just go ahead and fix it myself. I was actually trying to feel out what some repair like this would cost at a repair facility, an independent mechanic. But I thought, okay, I could try to get the motor rebuilt with new bearings, and I know some people have done that. But knowing the history of these motors, and when they get over 100,000 miles, I'm not sure even putting new bearings on them would give me a guarantee for extended life. So I decided that I wanted to see if I could find a new motor. And sure enough, the company is making a new motor for these fan units. And this costs right around $200. So that's a $1,300 saving. Now, you can imagine if you were an owner and a shop actually said, hey, it'd normally be $1,300, but I can, if you want, get you a motor and we'll replace just the motor, and it might be, if he's got labor involved, $300, $400. That's still way better than $1,500. Now, this isn't a difficult job, by the way. You may say, well, I don't do work on my own cars. Well, if you do oil changes and do some minor work, there's really only 3 bolts and a plug. You have to remove the intake hoses here, of course. But you get down in here, you got 3 bolts to remove, unplug the electrical motor, and just lift this right out. Look at the cavity here. You can see there's quite a bit of room to work. Once you get it on the bench, you can test things out, take it apart, and replace the motor yourself. Now that's really a big savings. So I hope this is an encouragement to those of you who maybe thought about maybe doing some work on your own, but at least if you don't do the work on your own, when you get some quote for a big repair bill, do a little research. Find out if there are some alternatives over just replacing the OE part. Now, in defense of mechanics, I know a lot of people say, oh yeah, those mechanics are trying to rip you off all the time. That's not necessarily so, folks. There's a lot of money involved in running a repair facility, paying all the taxes, all the wages, all the overhead. They do have to make a living. And a lot of times, they'll go to the book and they'll find the part, and they may say, okay, this OE part's available. They're going to have to pay, maybe $800, $900 for the part. They're going to charge you a couple $100 profit, and then they're going to charge you the labor. So it's not like they're going to run out and buy a $200 motor and charge you $1,500. I don't want to hear this, oh yeah, they're always trying to rip you off. That's not the case. But if you're willing to do some homework and do some research, find out what some alternatives are, you could go back to them and say, look, I found there's a used unit available that I want you to use, or maybe you find that there's an aftermarket part that you're willing to have them use. So even if you don't do the work yourself, there's still opportunity here in a situation like this to save a considerable amount of money on these type of repairs. Now, if you own a 2002 S500 and you have a noisy fan motor, we're going to go ahead and carry this motor on my website. We'll include some thread locker and some other supplies, and then I'll do a video that will take you through the process of removing it, getting it on the bench, replacing the motor, installing the new belt, and putting it back in the car. So you can't say, well, I really don't have instructions to do this. Yes, if you purchase the motor from us, the instructions will come with it. And once again, you'll be back on the road with a very quiet fan for just a little over $200. The new fan motor is installed, and I reinstalled the entire fan assembly back into the engine compartment, and we're ready to roll this baby out the door. Now, I should let you know that replacing the fan motor was not the only thing I did, and I want to encourage any of you watching this video to think about this also, because there's other bearings that tend to wear out at the same time a fan motor wears out. That's usually between 100 and 120,000 miles. On average, okay, I know there's variations to this, but if you have the fan assembly out of your car, I don't care whether it's an S500, an XYZ, you know, whatever chassis you have, this is very important, particularly on the M112 and M113 engines, which were built, you know, from 98 up to 2006. So there's a lot of cars that use some of the same components in the engine, and they wear out at that mileage. And one of them is the tensioner for the serpentine belt. The other one is the idler pulley for the serpentine belt. And the other thing that starts wearing out is the brushes on the voltage regulator. All these things can be accessed easily once you remove the fan. So what I recommend is that you go ahead and take the serpentine belt off and start spinning your water pump, spin your alternator, spin the idler pulley, spin the tensioner. If you hear any bearing noise that doesn't sound smooth and normal, you need to replace those parts now, because you'll be doing this job again, and it's a lot easier to do that when the fan assembly's out. So I'm just encouraging you to look at those other parts. I have another video available where I'm showing what I did and how I inspected these parts on this particular S500. I'll put a link to that in the show more part of this description, and I'll take you right to it. So you can kind of see there are some other things that you need to attend to if you're going to tackle replacing the fan motor in your own Mercedes-Benz.